Hi, I'm Lottie.
And I'm Christian.
And we're Circus District,
your source for online news, classes, and all things circus in Washington, D.C.
Thanks for being here.
Hey everyone, Christian here to provide your most formal introduction to the Circus District YouTube channel. I want to let you know up front that this video may contain coarse language. It also includes discussions about sexuality and gender identity, which I hope will inspire conversations in your own household. We know that the DMV circus community is kind, loving, and respectful, and we wish to keep it that way on our YouTube channel. If you wish to continue with subtitles, please click the CC button on your video screen right now. With that, please enjoy the video. So hello everyone, and welcome to the Pride Month interview series for the Circus District. We are so happy to have an extremely talented cast of circus humans joining us for these discussions. This series is meant to highlight the multifaceted LGBTQIA+ community of circus artists in the DMV, and to illustrate that pride is not a static concept with one set definition. Pride means many different things to many different people, and we're here to celebrate that. To give you some background, if you're just meeting us, Circus District is the online circus community in Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. We provide a weekly Here and Now roundup of virtual and in-person events, and we also publish regular articles on Dispatch, which is your source for local circus news, academics, book reviews, and more. As you watch these interviews on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, don't forget that we have a real website, circusdistrict.com, where you can find plenty of local resources and information to help you along on your circus journey. You can also contact us by emailing circusdistrict@gmail.com or messaging us on Facebook or Instagram. To give you an introduction of who I am, which you might be hearing multiple times if you're watching lots of these videos, my name is Christian Klock. My pronouns are he/him, and I started doing circus when I was 6 years old, and I learned to juggle, and I have been absolutely amazed at where that hobby, art, sport has taken me since then. I am one of the co-founders of the Circus District, and I've been performing and teaching juggling full-time since 2016, and I am celebrating Pride as a gay and queer individual. My guest today, who I'm super excited to talk to, is Maki Hinds, aka Maki Roll, producer of the 6th International Nerdlesque Festival, coming to Washington, D.C. in the fall of 2022. She has hosted and performed at numerous events combining burlesque, sideshow, video games, cosplay, and pop culture. You can also find her on Twitch as MakiStreams, playing video games while cosplaying and raising money for groups like Mind Out LGBTQ, which is a mental health service run by and for LGBTQ people who have experience with mental health issues. She was also a featured artist in the 2013 book, Breaking All the Rules, Cosplay and the Art of Self-Expression by photographer Ger Tysk. So Maki, first off, I would love for you to introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, and also tell us your preferred pronouns.
Ooh, I feel like you like nailed the introduction. I even forgot about that book. I am Maki Roll. My pronouns are she, her. I am a performer, producer, internet space oddity. In the DMV community, I was born and raised right outside of DC in Silver Spring. And all that I know about circus arts, burlesque, cosplay comes from the wonderful communities that I've been able to be a part of and foster here in DC. And I'm just really excited to be here in this virtual space with you.
We
So
are
thank
so
you.
happy to have you. How did you first get into the world of cosplay and burlesque? I feel like there's a lot of parallels there in terms of sort of what is possible. Sometimes it's like different boxes that can fit together in different ways. But did you get into them at the same time, or was it a separate development?
I actually got into cosplay when I was in high school. I started the anime club at my high school, and through that, I found conventions, and I pretty much immediately knew that I wanted to be one of the humans who was dressed up, who was getting pictures taken, and thankfully, my mom nurtured all of my weirdness and is an amazing seamstress and passed that on to me. So I started doing that basically to find community, and through that um, I found this zombie pinup calendar, and as one of the I guess promotional things for the zombie pinup calendar, um, it was a burlesque show, and I was asked, "Do I want to be in this burlesque show?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. I know what burlesque is. I've seen the movie with Christina Aguilera and Cher. I know." And I created a zombie burlesque cheerleader act. It was awful. And after that, I was introduced in some ways to nerdlesque and the concept of nerdlesque. And for me, I was like, so you mean I can cosplay and I can also take this cosplay off in like a quirky and or sexy way? I am totally into this. So it was kind of sort of a gateway, and I feel like all nerdy avenues kind of are gateways to each other. And since then, I've kind of had a lot of fun and success exploring that intersection of sex positivity and sexuality and pop culture.
Nice. So we'll get back to. I definitely want to talk about the zombie burlesque performance. But first of all, what does the word pride sort of mean to you now, and kind of how has that meaning changed over time?
Yeah. Um, well, I I honestly attribute a lot of me discovering my own queerness to these communities because they are so niche, and through them you're exposed to so many people, and so many people of different culture, of ethnicity, background. Um, and through that I kind of realized, I'm not really straight, you know? Um, so definitely as I have evolved as a performer, and as somebody who is big on community building, pride for me means celebration of self in all forms, celebration of what makes you unique and what makes you you. Um, and for me, I definitely got to explore and grow who I am as a queer human being through these different mediums, and I'm very fortunate for that.
That's amazing. So getting back to the zombie burlesque,
Oh
when you
God.
first got on stage, and I feel like anyone who's ever gotten in front of people and presented anything and felt that vulnerable, what was that feeling like, and how has that sort of changed over time? Because it's not just getting on stage, but I'm sure also for you getting on a Twitch stream, going to an event dressed as like cosplaying. I'm sure that over time you've gotten a little bit more comfortable with that and being able to sort of like flaunt a little bit more of your identity each time. So how has that experience been from when you first got on stage at the zombie burlesque show and then up to now?
Woo. It has been a journey for sure. Um, Definitely when I first pursued burlesque and I did this zombie cheerleader act, I was nervous. I definitely didn't know what to expect, and equally so when I showed up and there were like 10 people in the audience. So so for me, I've learned how to navigate those different situations. I've learned to present on this kind of like higher plane, because there's definitely a difference between Maki Roll and Maki Hinds slash Mongold. They are two separate entities, and for me, a lot of my growth was in parsing those different energies, and coming to terms that with the fact that these are different people. I'm also painfully Gemini, so it's even more of this, dynamic of two different beings that I had to foster and nurture, and really answer and figure out what each of them needed to thrive. Um, and so through that, I I've definitely grown, and I've learned to advocate both for Maki Roll and for Maki Hinds, um, because in different spaces, we need different things. So in terms of my performance, I I've definitely gained more confidence. I've definitely learned how to advocate for myself as well as for others. I've learned to take up more space. I've learned to demand more space when the space is not adequate enough. Um, and yeah, and all of that kind of just culminates in this onward journey um, to whatever the next platform is. I kind of feel like I I'm on this shonen anime arc where I'm just like climbing and climbing, and I'm trying to be, the best person that I can be. And definitely this has helped a lot.
Nice. What was it like growing up? You said you grew up in Silver Spring, just outside of DC area. What was the environment like in terms of support for LGBTQIA plus people? Did you have role models that you saw, whether you knew at the time or not, whether they were queer or another identity? Um, or do you feel that like cosplay was kind of like your first jump into like, oh, I could play another character in this world that we live in?
Honestly, I'm very lucky. I went to James Hubert Blake High School, and it was a art school, and it was an art high school, and it was a new art school. So a lot of the things we were doing were different, and we had the gay straight alliance, and we had things like that that really kind of fostered that community. I remember when I was in journalism in high school, um, we ran an article, and it was the front page article in our high school newspaper about a student who had two fathers, and so through that I was exposed. One of my best friends also came out to me, and I felt very lucky um to have been that safe space for him. And definitely as a high schooler, I didn't really, understand the nuances of the LGBTQIA plus community. Um, and as I was exposed more and more via cosplay, via burlesque, um, I was able to flesh out these concepts a little bit more, and also unlearn a lot of toxic ideations that I had. Um, so definitely I was very very lucky to have grown up where I did, and I was very lucky to be able to um just keep growing and keep finding community in pretty much the same area.
Yeah, I mean, myself, I have some like lawn maintenance going on outdoors. I don't know if it's super loud, but we'll just keep going and see.
It's fine.
See what? Okay, as long as you can hear me, then that's great. um, yeah, I find that really interesting in terms of you were talking about sort of internalized, like I guess biases or maybe just assumptions that we have about what it means to be gay, trans, whatever it is, whatever the identity is, and how we kind of internalize them. How has being in the burlesque community and then doing more performing and cosplaying and all of that allowed you to see more of what's possible in terms of the spectrum of identities in our community?
Oh wow. Whew, that's a big question, but it's also a great question because like I said, I owe pretty much all that I am to these communities. And you know through these communities, I was introduced to drag, and then through that I was introduced to various subsets of drag, like drag kings. And when I started and also even before I got into burlesque, the concept of crossplay was a thing that I grew to be very interested in. You know, kind of the gender bending of costumes and characters. And then eventually I grew to just realize that I just wanted to be these male characters, and I just wanted to be these, you know, badass characters. And just through all of that, and also in kind of like noticing some of the things that would happen within these niche communities that were supposed to be inclusive. You know, you start to notice that um you know, the top people are still very, very white, very, very cis, very one sort of aesthetic. And I didn't like that. um and so when I started producing, and when I started actually being in a space where I could build communities on my own, I wanted the people that I brought to the stage to be fully representative of all that there is in nerdlesque, burlesque, sideshow, circus. Um, and for me to do that, a lot of that had was me going into different spaces and seeing how queer performers and queer producers um, ran their shows and did what they did. And it was a lot of me um being vulnerable and talking to people um about their experiences, and then eventually being comfortable with talking about my own experiences, and you know, slowly unveiling myself as a queer person. Because for a long time I felt, you know, where does my queerness kind of fit in? You know, I'm kind of I present very heteronormative, so I didn't know where I kind of fit in. And for a long time I kind of didn't identify as queer because I didn't know if I could. um so definitely uh being present and really taking in this community and taking in um various identities and cultures really helped me.
And as someone who kind of has their, you obviously are experiencing many different subcultures, which I think is a really valuable thing right now, to be able to see a perspective across so many different genres. Where do you think? I think a lot of times when you look at multiple subcultures, you realize a lot of them have the same problems, because those are the same problems that we have in society, of like misogyny or homophobia or transphobia, or not including like a diverse group of people in the leadership, and having stakeholders of many ethnicities and identities and backgrounds. So where do you think a lot of these subcultures can do better, kind of, especially as we reemerge, climb out of our caves from streaming, and return to live events and live interaction?
um yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this. um i I feel like these communities, it all starts at the top. It starts with who is informing these decisions, who are making the decisions um, within these spaces. You know, who are the community leaders? Who are the veterans? Why are they the veterans? Um, One of the things that I noticed when I started performing burlesque is that there were a lot of, you know, cis hetero white dudes who were producing, performing, and I was like, I feel like this is a space that was made by queer folks. So I'm really, this is really disconnecting for me. Um and specifically, one of the experiences that I had in producing I produced my very first solo show, which was also um, going on the same day as another show, which was hosted by a white dude, produced by a white dude. Um, he ended up taking in patrons for my show who thought my show was his show, vice versa. And then at the end of it, he reached out to me and asked me for money. And I was like, I don't, I didn't know how to navigate that because he was a person with influence and he was a person who had a lot of clout in the community. And I was a budding performer. I had maybe a year under my belt before I actually started producing, but I know what I wanted to see um, in the community. And so for me, um, I didn't know who I could go to and who I could talk to about this. And thankfully, um, the venue owner, shout out to Phantom Comics, the venue manager was a queer woman and basically was like, we have you. No matter what, we have you. Do not falter, do not give him money. This was your show. He knows the rules and he knows what he's doing right now. And that really stuck with me because when I produce and as I kind of build my own spaces, I think critically about, leaving space for other folks who are marginalized, um, to feel like they can come to me and feel like they can tell me when they think something is off or they think something isn't right. And definitely I feel like in these niche spaces and in these communities, um, I think marginalized people deserve to have more say and deserve to have more power. And in these spaces we deserve to take up more space than what we do. And I truly believe that once that starts happening, um you do see a change. And not only um the what these performance spaces look like, but how they are presented. For a long time, uh sideshow, circus, burlesque were presented in these rigid boxes and guidelines of what they should be. But you go to a queer performer show, you go to a black femme show, and you see these concepts completely turned on their heads. And you don't even know what you're watching, but it's amazing and it's wonderful and it's transformative. And I truly believe that in order to keep that going, um, we just need more queer folks to the front, more marginalized people to the front, more black femmes to the front.
Just unmuting myself. There we go. Yes. Yes to all of that. One of the things I want to shout out is like the DC Weirdo Show is one of those places where,
Yes.
yes, where I have experienced exactly what you're talking about. And I find it fascinating because in the circus community in particular, sometimes people can look at DC and go, there's not really circus there because they think in terms of the circus school in Montreal or in Philadelphia that are doing contemporary circus art, which is actually like absolutely beautiful productions and can also include very queer themes. But I feel like especially in DC, Virginia, Baltimore, we have these like smaller. I don't even want to call them underground because to us they're so real and so like important communities such as the DC Weirdo Show and a lot of our smaller burlesque shows that are so impactful in the community and in such incredible spaces. And you might be watching it going, is this circus? Is this burlesque? Is this art? And then you go, I don't care. This is wonderful. So that's one of the
Yes.
things that I love doing with the Circus District is kind of constantly asking that question. I'm like, is cosplay circus? Does it matter? It doesn't matter.
No.
You're
Yes.
welcome everyone. So one of the things that's interesting is that we've had all of this time away from live performance, but it's inspiring to see someone like you develop such an amazing online following and build that community. Um, what do you think, despite this year and a half that we've had um, being extremely difficult and extremely hard and traumatic in so many ways, what do you hope the outcome is sort of for what you're talking about? Artists taking more ownership and agency over what they can create and maybe just trying to find a way, not going through that producer that we all know and get work from who, ends up feeling exploitative or just not a great situation where we don't have ownership about what we present.
Um, I think that the one thing that the pandemic did give us is this time to really reflect on, um, what concepts are important to us, how much time we're giving to these spaces, what are we getting back from these spaces. And definitely for me, before the pandemic, I was go, 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 nonstop, nonstop, nonstop. Take every gig, take every opportunity, do everything. And that slowdown for me really forced me to reevaluate what is important to me in these spaces. How can I better show up for myself, and by proxy, how can I show up for others? Who may be trying to figure out their way in these communities, and they don't really know how. So for me, ideally with this, I would like people, and I've seen it. I've seen a lot of performers and producers really reflect on their roles in in their various communities. And I want to shout out Lefty Lucy really quickly, who was the previous director of the Nerdlesque Festival. She is a white woman, and she evaluated her role in nerdlesque and burlesque, and how she wanted to present the Nerdlesque Festival moving forward. And through that, it was passed to me. And at that moment, I was thinking about, where do I go next? Do I even want to still do Nerdlesque? And the answer was always yes. But it was sort of this stagnant feeling of, you know, am I pushing this community forward? Am I pushing the culture forward? Am I sending down the ladder for people to climb up with me, or even past me? um and with what I was doing, I was producing shows, I was offering opportunities, but I always thought I could do more. And with that handoff of the Nerdlesque Festival, I kind of realized that this was the purpose. And so I'm hoping, with as we are coming out of the pandemic, we are a lot kinder to ourselves. We are a lot more mindful of the ways that we take up space, and more mindful of how we um give that space to others, or how we allow other people to take up space within the communities that we've built. um and especially, I think, within these niche communities, because for a lot of people, these communities are all that they have. And definitely fostering a safer, more inclusive community uh is something that I am definitely hoping for, and I know is going to happen coming out of the pandemic.
And talk a little bit about the Nerdlesque Festival. It's coming up in 2022. It has I believe, 5-year history of being performed at Coney Island and also at various places in New York City. This is the first time it's coming to DC, correct?
Yes.
Nice. Okay, great. So, what kind of energy do you feel like that's going to bring to the festival? And also, just talk generally about what you're excited about in your role as a producer.
Yeah. The Nerdlesque Festival has, it has this amazing, wonderful, robust history. And I, I have my own history with the Nerdlesque Festival. Um, I applied, I believe, I don't even know. My years are so jumbled, but I applied one year. I didn't get in. It was a blow for me personally, but I didn't take it as a loss. And so I worked on the very same act. I literally there are pictures and videos of the evolution of this storm act that I to this day I still believe is my best work. And I applied the very next year and I got in. And being in that space, I just met so many people that I was a big fan of, so many people who would grow to be my mentors, and yeah, and just like having that kind of come full circle where I'm now the producer. Um it it felt right for me to bring it to the place where it all kind of began for me. So in moving it to DC, I realized that there is a lot of risk involved. There's a lot of curation involved, but honestly, I think that's the fun part. I think the fun part of it is, finding a way to give it this new identity while still, leaning into the culture that came before it. And with that, I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm working with a lot of amazing people, not only in burlesque, but also in the words, but also in the convention community and the nerdy community. People who have really cut their teeth in this space, and who have really been instrumental, in my opinion, to furthering and bettering our communities, our nerdy communities. And so, in that, I want to create something that is bigger than any of us. I want to create this revival. I want people to come in who may not know what nerdlesque is, but they know they have a connection to nerdy culture. They have a connection to this concept of being an outsider. And I want to invite everybody in to come and experience this. And most importantly, I want to celebrate um these performers who have put so much into making nerdlesque a legitimate art form and a legitimate subsection of burlesque. Because for a long time, nerdlesque was kind of considered this. It was like this plaything. It was a thing that people kind of did. They kind of workshopped, but you knew the big bread was in Neo, and maybe like the real big headpieces and like stoned down things. And I want to show people that you can be all of that in nerdlesque, but you can also just be whatever you want. um some of the coolest nerdlesque concepts I've seen didn't even involve stripping, didn't even involve the concept of stripping. Some of them involved elements of circus and sideshow. um for me, I've done kind of this electric lady act where I do like angle grinding, and that was something that I didn't know I could do until I experienced this culture and this art form. And ultimately, what I want to do is celebrate this, bring people in, um, let people know that this is something that they can be a part of. This is something that is very real.
Yeah, and if anyone watching this has not come to terms with their nerdy identity, we are fully here for you. Feel free to
Come
reach
to me,
out
nerdy
and
babies.
let us know that you are a nerd, because it is okay. So it's very cathartic to just hear you talking about producing an event because it has been so long that we've been stuck in these boxes, talking to each other through the internet. So it's really exciting to hear you planning a real event. Do you have a date yet in 2022?
Do not have a date
Great.
yet.
No worries, but we can check out. I believe the website is thenerdlesquefestival.com, so that's where all the updates will go. Great,
Yes.
fabulous. So I have a few questions left. You talked about Storm being one of your favorite characters to play, and I feel like a lot of us in the queer community will watch popular culture like movies, especially like Marvel movies or comic book movies, um, and see queerness where other people might just see, I don't know, a quirky person, or like, oh, they're just interesting, or like we will see these facets through our lens. So is there anyone who you're really excited to cosplay as in the future, and maybe just bring your full identity into that person?
Um, yes, I'm actually one of my first kind of like big comebacks to cosplay will be in partnership with Philip Odango, who is a queer fabricator out of Virginia Beach. He's amazing. Um, and he does these like really amazing cosplay transformations, and we're actually working on me being completely transformed into Ahsoka from Star Wars Rebels. So I'm really excited about that in particular. Um, Another character that I've kind of always wanted to cosplay um, is honestly, I've always wanted to cosplay Wanda Maximoff, aka the Scarlet Witch, and even more so with WandaVision. Wanda and Vision, they were kind of my intro in a way to comic books, to American comic books, and I fell in love with them because um, they were these characters where you can take them out of their superhero situations, and you know they were deeply flawed, and they had um, these deep struggles and these deep issues that were explored, and they kind of, and Vision especially, um having to walk this line of like, what is being human really. And so for me that really kind of spoke to me, because I, as someone who was kind of figuring out their own queerness and like figuring out where they kind of fit in with society, Vision's story, Wanda's story really spoke to me. So I honestly, I want to cosplay both of them.
Awesome. We are definitely looking forward to that. So I like to finish with something that's close to my heart, which is the topic of food, because I always feel like it says something about the person. So, what is a meal that you really like to either cook, or if you don't cook at all, something that you would really enjoy eating?
Ah, that's easy. Pho all day. I could eat pho for breakfast, lunch, and dinner 24/7. It is absolutely just a comfort meal for me. I just, it's very warm, it's very filling. Um it's, I am a person who is like a, you know, I'm a salt to taste person, so I really like that every time I can have a different experience depending on what I add to it. So definitely pho, hands
And I'm
down.
pretty sure, like, that if you're Vietnamese, that you sometimes do have pho for breakfast. So I don't want to speak for the community, but
Lucky.
I'm pretty sure it's valid. Not that you need an excuse, but do you have a go-to spot for pho?
Um, yes, I do. There's one place in my area, and I'm not gonna blow up my spot, but there is one singular place in my area. They know our order. My partner and I, they know our order by heart. We come in, they see our faces, they know who we are. So yeah, it is that deep.
Amazing. Okay, great. So we look forward to maybe being able to actually have pho in person in the near
Oh
future.
my gosh.
So you can find Maki Roll on Instagram as Maki Roll Official, on Twitter as Maki Roll OFC, on Twitch, where she has amazing streams, twitch.tv/MakiStreams. And again, the Nerdlesque Festival website is thenerdlesquefestival.com. So we're really looking forward to what you're going to create and really excited to hear so much about it. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.